She was the one who was supposed to make it. In an industry notorious for chewing up and spitting out child stars, Emma Watson was the exception to the rule. She was the golden girl who had navigated the impossible journey from beloved child star to Ivy League scholar, global feminist icon, and respected UN Women Goodwill ambassador. While her Harry Potter co-stars battled personal demons, faded from the spotlight, or struggled to escape the shadows of their iconic roles, Emma seemed to transcend it all. She was polished, articulate, and purposeful, the perfect modern celebrity. Her every move was calculated, her brand one of intelligent, ethical, and graceful stardom. We watched her grow up and rooted for her not just as an actress, but as a person. She was an easy icon to champion, a symbol that you could have it all: fame, intellect, and integrity. However, if you look closely at the timeline of her career, a disturbing pattern emerges. The leading roles dried up. The constant media presence faded. The once ubiquitous star began a slow, deliberate retreat from the very industry that had raised her. The official narrative was that she was taking a step back by choice, focusing on her personal life and activism. But the truth is far more sinister. What if Emma Watson didn't simply step away? What if she was quietly, systematically pushed out? This is the investigation into the tragic cancellation of Emma Watson, and the shocking reasons why Hollywood ultimately turned on their golden girl. The foundation of Emma Watson's impeccable reputation was built during her decade-long journey as Hermione Granger. From the age of 9, she was thrust into a global phenomenon, her face synonymous with one of the most cherished franchises in history. Unlike many child stars, her off-screen life was meticulously managed to mirror the intelligence and poise of her on-screen character. She was the good girl, the one who studied on set, who got straight A's, and who famously did not succumb to the typical pitfalls of early fame. As the Potter franchise concluded in 2011, the world held its breath, waiting to see what would become of its heroine. Emma's next moves were masterstrokes of personal branding. She enrolled at Brown University, consciously choosing a path of academia over immediate movie stardom. This decision cemented her image as more than just an actress. She was a scholar, a thinker. She wasn't just playing a smart character, she was smart. This identity became her shield, protecting her from the cynical gaze of the media and setting her on a pedestal that seemed unassailable. Her post-Potter film career was carefully curated to avoid typecasting and to align with her burgeoning intellectual persona. She took roles in independent films like The Perks of Being a Wallflower and period pieces like The Bling Ring and My Week with Marilyn. While these projects were critically respected, they were not massive commercial blockbusters. The one exception was Disney's 2017 live-action Beauty and the Beast, a role that seemed tailor-made for her. It was a billion-dollar success, proving her bankability and seemingly securing her place in the A-list firmament. But behind the scenes, a conflict was brewing. The pressure to maintain the Emma Watson brand was immense. Every role, every public appearance, every statement was filtered through the lens of her being a role model. She was shouldering the weight of representing not just herself, but an ideal. The golden cage, though beautiful, was still a cage. It was during this period that she fully leaned into her activism, becoming a UN Women Goodwill ambassador and launching the groundbreaking HeForShe campaign in 2014. Her speech at the UN was a viral moment, praised for its eloquence and its call to engage men in the fight for gender equality. This solidified her transition from movie star to thought leader. She was now Emma Watson activist who also acted. For a time, the industry celebrated her. She was the perfect spokesperson, articulate, passionate, and unimpeachable. But this very visibility and the specific, uncompromising stance of her activism began to create powerful enemies in the shadowy corners of Hollywood. The first public crack in her pristine facade appeared subtly. As the Me Too movement gained momentum in 2017, Emma was naturally looked to as a leading voice. However, her stance began to make the old guard of Hollywood nervous. She was not just calling out blatant predators. She was speaking about systemic power imbalances, the gender pay gap, and the subtle ways women are silenced. Conversations that hit too close to home for many powerful executives and producers. Whispers started that she was difficult, that her activism was distracting, and that she had too many opinions for an actress. The label of diva was being quietly prepared, a weapon historically used to discredit strong women who challenged the status quo. The true beginning of the end, however, can be traced to a single pivotal moment that has been largely scrubbed from the mainstream narrative. In 2018, at the peak of her influence, Emma was attached to a major, prestige dramatic film, a project that was to be her definitive, adult, post-Potter masterpiece. The director, an old-school Hollywood titan with a notorious ego, clashed with her repeatedly on set. Sources close to the production describe him as being threatened by her intelligence and her unwillingness to be a passive participant. She questioned script choices, suggested alterations to her character to make her less of a stereotype, and advocated for more respectful working hours for the crew. The director saw this not as collaboration, but as insubordination. The conflict culminated in a massive blow-up, after which Emma was allegedly labeled a troublemaker by the director and his powerful agency. The film was completed, but her performance was allegedly downplayed in the edit, and her experience on set was so negative she privately questioned her future in the industry. This incident became a poison pill in her career. The rumor mill in Hollywood is a more powerful tool than any formal blacklist. The words difficult and complicated began to follow her name in studio meetings. The very qualities that made her a brilliant activist, her conviction, her refusal to stay silent, her demand for respect, were now being weaponized against her as an actress. The roles that should have been offered to her, the smart, leading, Oscar-worthy parts, suddenly started going to other, less political actresses. The phone, which had never stopped ringing, began to grow quiet. The Golden Girl had challenged the kings in their castle, and they decided the kingdom was better off without her. She was being frozen out, and the world was about to witness the chilling silence that follows when Hollywood decides to abandon one of its own. The silence was deafening. Where there should have been a triumphant follow-up to $1 billion Beauty and the Beast, there was only a void. The carefully managed public narrative was one of a chosen hiatus. Emma was taking time for herself, focusing on her relationship and deepening her activism. But for those who understood the rhythms of Hollywood, the absence felt punitive, not purposeful. The industry that had once clamored to anoint its most promising star was now giving her the cold shoulder. The freeze-out was so complete, so professional, that it could only be deliberate. The golden cage had not been opened. It had simply been left to tarnish in the rain. A beautiful but abandoned relic of what the system once wanted her to be. The final, public confirmation of her exile came not from a press release, but from a glaring omission. In 2019, a major studio began casting for a prestigious literary adaptation, a role that was universally considered perfect for Emma Watson. It was intelligent, feminist, and required exactly her kind of poised intensity. Her name was floated in every trade publication and fan forum. Yet, when the cast was officially announced, her name was conspicuously absent. The part went to a rising star with none of Watson's baggage or convictions. This wasn't just a missed opportunity, it was a message. The message was received loud and clear by every agent, manager, and producer in town. Emma Watson was not a safe bet. She was a liability. The public, however, remained largely unaware of this silent war being waged against their heroine. The final, devastating blow would be struck not in a private studio meeting, but in the brutal, unforgiving court of public opinion. In early 2021, as social justice movements reached a new peak of intensity online, a new wave of cancel culture began to target previously unimpeachable figures. And Emma, with her high-profile, corporate-friendly feminism, became a prime target. The backlash was swift and vicious. She was accused of white feminism, of promoting a brand of activism that was too sanitized, too focused on the experiences of privileged women, and not inclusive enough of women of color and the trans community. A single photo shoot for Vogue, in which she discussed her activism while wearing an expensive, arguably revealing outfit, was dissected and condemned as hypocritical. This was the moment Hollywood had been waiting for. The very platform she had built for herself, her identity as an activist, was now being used as the weapon to finally tear her down. The studios and executives who had grown to resent her now had the public justification they needed to officially distance themselves. They could point to the online outrage and say, "See, the public has turned on her. She's problematic now." It was the perfect cover for their own prejudice against her strength and intellect. The private blacklisting now had a public-facing excuse. The Golden Girl was not just difficult, she was cancelled. In the years since, Emma Watson's public appearances have become rare, her filmography sparse. When she does speak, it is with a palpable sense of caution and weariness. The bright, fiery conviction in her eyes during her UN speech has been replaced by a guarded, distant look. She has spoken obliquely about the crushing pressure of being a symbol and the anxiety that accompanied her fame. It is the language of someone who has been profoundly wounded, not by failure, but by betrayal. She was betrayed by an industry that loved her only as long as she was compliant, and by a public that built her up as a perfect idol only to tear her down for her inevitable imperfections. The tragic cancellation of Emma Watson is not a story of a career that failed. It is the story of a system that cannot tolerate a woman who is both successful and outspoken, both powerful and principled. Hollywood did not know what to do with a star who could not be controlled, so it chose to discard her. Her story serves as a chilling warning to every woman in the industry. You can be a star, or you can have a voice. But the moment you try to have both, the machine will conspire to silence you. The golden girl was abandoned, not because she fell from grace, but because she dared to think she was an equal in a kingdom that only wanted a princess. And in her silence, we have all lost one of the most promising and authentic voices of a generation.